to the throw, fire, and down! Incomplete, down at the goal line by San Diego! Tomlinson, off the left side, Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. There's the half to now. Here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
Jamie, Craig, who's got it better than us?
Nobody.
It happened. We're here. Let's fucking go. No kids around here. It's time to go. You
All
did
tucked in.
it.
All tucked in, fed.
Yes. It happened. Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. It's happening. Our dream has come true. The Anthony Lynn era, the Mike McCoy era, everything else, it's Brandon Staley and everything else in between all leads to this beautiful, magnificent moment of the Chargers bringing on Jim Harbaugh. 5 years. What a day and what a time to be alive.
What a great day. Not probably the most significant day in Chargers history. Bigger than the move, bigger than the AFC Championship game in 95. Bigger than all of it. The biggest day in Chargers history.
I'm not an overly emotional person, but I mean, it almost feels like it's welling up a little bit. I cannot believe it. It's freaking amazing, man. We've been through some torture, and it was all to get us here. It's just beautiful. Can't put it into words.
We're gonna get Craig to cry by the end of this, and Jamie to say bolt up by the end of this. So
I don't know about that.
Come on,
Not for Harbaugh.
I might get drunk.
Most important day in Chargers history, and we can't get a bolt up. Okay, all right.
I'll think about it. We'll see how I'm feeling at the end of the show.
All right. So all right. So full disclosure, I am coming in this a little blind because I just got back here. I just got on here. Update the people and update me, please. Other than what I've got here, give us the details. Jamie, Craig.
So as we know, the Chargers have been talking to Jim Harbaugh for the last 24 to 30 hours. They put in a lot of work. They had dinner last night. They have been talking about structure, how the football operations were going to work. There were all kinds of people freaking out about, oh my God, they're going to let him leave the building. He's going to go to Atlanta. We're going to lose him. If he goes, he's done. I mean, all kinds of freakouts. And I get it. A lot was riding on it. But if you've been watching this show, if you've been watching our individual shows, if you're in the Discord, which we're going to get to here in a little bit,
Discord gang salute.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, salute. You know this was going to happen. We've been telling you all along. The message never changed. It was going to happen. Forget all of the nonsense about Harbaugh's going back to Michigan.
He was in Ann Arbor today.
Oh, yeah. He was in Ann Arbor and LA at the same time, right?
Yeah.
He's obviously
instant teleportation. I heard that's a skill.
Mad teleportation skills for Harbaugh. Yeah. But you knew this was going to happen. We all in the Discord knew it was going to happen. Anybody who's been watching our programming knew. And tonight, we're going to tell you how we knew. We've been kind of dropping hints and talking about things throughout our shows and things for the last 4 months, almost. And now we're going to go back to the beginning. And Garrett's going to talk about all the information we've gotten from the very beginning of this so we can help connect the dots, talk about when they first started meeting, what they've met, how many times they've met in person, what they've talked about, what the structure is going to look like. We have pretty much all of it. The only thing we really don't have is the money. I don't know if that's been announced yet, but we haven't seen that yet. And we don't have the coaching staff, although we've all probably got some pretty good guesses at some of the coordinator positions. So Garrett, this is information that you got through your relationship. So why don't you go ahead and lead the way and start connecting the dots and just lay out the timeline and let everybody know when this started and how it unfolded.
Yeah. We'll start from the beginning and then we'll just talk about Harbaugh. But just to before we get off that track, TH, does following the Patreon for free get you in the Discord? Go join the Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you will get into the Discord. It's included. So go on to the Lightning Round Twitter account. We've got it pinned. There's a link there. Join the Patreon. You're going to get a Discord link. We've got a real strong core group of people who were freaking out a lot this week. But no matter what we said, even when we said don't freak out, they were still freaking out. But we love the Discord gang, and make sure you're following us over there, especially with this timeline, because if you were in there, you would have saw a lot of this stuff already. So this dates back to, and these are literal messages from Discord. So we're going to just go straight off the Discord. There's no hiding, full disclosure. You got a date here. I know it's a little small here, but if you look, we're talking 10/26/23. That's October for all you that need me to translate the number to months. So in October, there was a rumor about Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan. There were talks about the sanctions and whether or not he was going to go or not. What we got was more information on top of that. And I'll read it for anybody listening. All right, everyone. We've been sitting on some big news, and we decided to let it fly. So a lot of this Discord stuff, Jamie and Craig and I are texting about it weeks, if not months before, wondering whether we're going to share it or not. And then we did. So there's rumors about Jim Harbaugh leaving college, and they were true. I said that's because the Chargers have spoke with Harbaugh about coaching the team if it doesn't work out with Brandon Staley. So at this point, Brandon Staley's still head coach. The two parties, meaning the Chargers and the Harbaugh team, had a loose conversation around the time of the week 2 loss to the Titans. So we're talking 2 weeks into this season is how far back this tracks. There was mutual interest, and Harbaugh is ready to leave Michigan and has even said he's more than willing to relocate to Los Angeles. In this conversation, Harbaugh mentioned he's ready to make the jump to the NFL because he's tired of the college football restrictions. The team is still focused on the season, but they have a preliminary head coaching contingency plan if everything falls into place. And boy, did it ever. So, laying the groundwork at the end of October, before Halloween, before spooky season, we've got talks of Harbaugh, Chargers already having a loose conversation, not being able to real talk in detail, but just kind of putting out feelers. And after week 2, they knew, after going 0-2, that Harbaugh was going to be the guy if the fallout with Staley happened.
And I just want to say, I think we sat on this for a couple of weeks before we released it. So this is when we shared it with Discord, but we didn't share it right away because I think part of us maybe didn't entirely believe it. and the Chargers were in the middle of the season, and we weren't sure when to share it. But once things started to go sideways, we decided to share it.
But if you follow me on Twitter, I did have a pinned tweet, and it's still there. I think it was around that time that we found out the information. It's just been sitting there. People were asking me what it was about, and I just kind of played it off to the side. But trust me, guys, it was really difficult not to share. We were excited about it, but still, due to the circumstances and everything, and just trying to stay in line with proper protocol, we held it.
And this is about the time when we were getting some pushback because Harbaugh's still coaching Michigan. Why would the Chargers even talk to another coach mid-season or at the beginning of the season? During the season, why would that happen? Tons of pushback. And
they'll never pay him.
Yep.
He'll never leave Michigan. They'll never give him control. He's jerking them around. He's using them for leverage. We heard all of it.
Yep. So, yeah. Not just in October, but even as of
a few weeks ago,
if not a couple of days ago.
Yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. All right. So then we move on to December 21st. I got an update, everyone. Chargers have an ongoing dialogue with Jim Harbaugh and his team during the season. They've had 3 separate conversations, meaning Harbaugh and the Chargers. The first being after the week 2 loss, like I mentioned. Most recently, after Brandon Staley was fired, Harbaugh is the Chargers' current top target in their head coaching search. So we know that they've had 3 conversations up to this point. And then I also added at the bottom here, because there were tons of rumors after Staley was fired that Belichick was going to the Chargers. That was written in stone before even the Harbaugh was kind of floating around. But man, was that Belichick thing going strong. And I said, the Chargers and Belichick have not expressed interest in one another. Everything right now regarding Belichick is just hypothetical. And not only was it hypothetical, they never even talked to Bill Belichick. So that is almost made up if you're thinking about it. So maybe people are connecting some dots of Belichick maybe wanting to hook up with Herbert or whatever, but we're no fake shit here. We're not gonna report stuff just to report it. This is not happening.
And there's another one. There was another message that I thought you were going to drop in here too, where they were talking about firing him if they lost to the Patriots.
Oh,
and they went back and forth on, is it fair to fire him?
Right.
If Keenan's hurt, because Keenan wasn't going to play in that game. So they even had those conversations as late as, or I guess as early as that New England game.
Yes. That is, I did skip over that part. There was definitely some conversations that if they lost to the Patriots, that Staley would have been fired. But I was too focused on Harbaugh. And I also only had 5 minutes to do this. So here we are. All right. So that's, again, I got the date here, December 21st. So if anybody wants to go and check timelines and when anybody ever mentioned Harbaugh and the Chargers, go for it. We're all open here. So January 8th, updating the last one, which is the one that I just talked about. The Chargers did meet with Harbaugh's team and Jim Harbaugh after the Rose Bowl. That's 4 total meetings between Harbaugh and his team now. More meetings to come after tonight. So we reported this. No, there hadn't been anything until about a couple days later when it got confirmed from, was it Cowherd that mentioned it, Jamie? We almost tweeted this thing out. Who mentioned that?
Cowherd didn't mention it until like 2 days ago that I'm aware of. I had not heard anybody mention a meeting, and it wasn't even, it happened. There were rumors of a meeting after the Rose Bowl.
Right.
And that was it last night? It was over the weekend, I think.
Right. Cause that's when we were texting. So it was Cowherd, right? That said it?
It was Cowherd. He had Middlecoff, I think, on his show with him. Yeah. And it was Middlecoff that dropped the reference because they were talking about why would he leave, mentioning again that the Spanoses were sensitive about being labeled as being cheap and about not wanting to win. And Middlecoff said he just dropped it, like just kind of glassed over it as like, yeah, and by the way, there are rumors that they met right after the Rose Bowl. And that was the first time I had heard anybody other than us report that.
Yeah. So, yes. So we got it confirmed later because this is January 8th. And we're, what's today? The 24th or something?
24th.
So we're talking 2 weeks after the fact. They confirm what we had reported, that Jim Harbaugh did meet with the Chargers after the Rose Bowl. Then, shortly after that, the day after, actually, after their meeting with the Rose Bowl, I got a text last night and it said, in quotes, at this point, the only thing that would keep Harbaugh from being head coach is the money. Chargers and Harbaugh are both their mutual first preferred choice. Harbaugh didn't take a second interview with any other team. Didn't interview with anybody else other than the Falcons, correct?
That's correct. And the Falcons wanted to interview him a second time, and there were reports that it was scheduled, but I don't think it was ever scheduled.
Nope. They didn't even let him go. They hired him before he even got on the plane. So that, again, they were their mutual first preferred choice. They both ended up getting what they wanted. And then on the 15th, from this morning, the meeting today, this was during their first meeting, right before their first meeting.
Their first publicly known meeting.
Right. Thank you. The meeting today is going to be heavily focused on the terms and the money involved. Harbaugh and the Chargers organization are all on the same team in terms of football operations. They've already established a majority of it through multiple meetings, like we talked about, and that you got to see in the Discord. They've been close to the money, but today, and by the way, that close to the money deal also came out, a couple days ago, about they were in striking distance. That whole thing came out 3 or 4 days ago. So a week after we reported it, the Chargers are going down. This isn't an I told you so. We're just matching dates. That's all. The Chargers are going, while I would love to take a victory lap here, I'm just matching dates. The Chargers are going into the meeting, letting Harbaugh know he has full support when it comes to staffing. They will also have a conversation about general manager today too, to get Harbaugh's input on what he'd prefer. Either way, the football stuff is all but locked up. The money might be the one thing to slow it down, but going into this meeting today, it's already nearing the finish line. Regarding Cowherd's report, there isn't a single person in the front office that matters that doesn't have Jim Harbaugh as the number one choice to coach the Chargers in 2024. So Cowherd has a report this morning on the 15th saying that there's a rift within the Chargers organization, that they are split on Jim Harbaugh. There are people within the building that do not like Jim Harbaugh as head coach. I say not true. Obviously not true, because they had a meeting for what feels like 2 full days. They don't leave each other. They probably had a sleepover, popcorn, watched scary movies, made pancakes in the morning with chocolate chips and sprinkles. And what did I say?
No. It's Chappelle Show.
Oh, right. Pancakes. Had their pancakes, and so obviously they were completely enamored with each other. And so
Cowherd actually doubled down on that today, by the way. Later on, after the news dropped, he came out and basically said again that there was a divide, and apparently there were some longer tenured people in the organization that didn't necessarily jive that much with Harbaugh. They wanted to go younger. So actually they were looking at Johnson as their favorite per his report today.
Yes. There were also other reports by not just Cowherd, but others that the Chargers were not going to hire Harbaugh today because they wanted to wait for another interview with Ben Johnson. I never heard anything about that, never reported anything like that, but obviously not the case.
There were also reports that he wanted to go to Atlanta for the second interview, that he was still, quote, interested in that job, quotes that he had already returned to Michigan and was working in his office today.
Yeah.
All kinds of misinformation coming out. So as far as we know, based on what we've been told, there was no divide. They were zoned in on him, and I think the way things played out the last 30 hours or so shows that they were really zoned in on him, and he was the first choice, and they were going to make it work.
I asked specifically about this, Jamie, and he said there's not a single person who doesn't want Harbaugh as head coach. So, yeah, definitely not the case. So, last one here. This is from yesterday, the 23rd, because it's the 24th today. The meeting with Harbaugh started at 12:45. This is the beginning of this, 48-hour meeting. My guy said today was going to be a discussion about staffing. Harbaugh was going to come in and figure out who he could really get to make it work. And he thinks it could be done by today. Money is already there, like previously mentioned. Now, can Harbaugh get the guys he wants around him? And the answer being yes, he will. So that's our timeline. That's how long they've been courting Harbaugh, how much Harbaugh has taken on these conversations with the Chargers. This whole 48-hour love fest that they've had today, this stems back, as you saw, to the end of October. So they did all their homework, and I know we're probably going to have to praise the Chargers front office for the way in which they handled this, but the way in which they went about courting Harbaugh, starting in October, having preliminary conversations when he's in town, talking to him, making sure to give him control, making sure that he's going to get the guys that he wants around him, making sure he gets the money that he wants, the amount of years he wants, and not letting him leave the building today is an impressive process in which they got him. And I commend the Chargers, and I do not hand out praise for this Chargers front office maybe ever, but in the way in which they did this was impressive. They did their homework. They let the process play out when interviewing all these other candidates, and they got the guy they wanted. They zeroed in on him late, and they made sure he didn't leave.
Yeah, I think obviously they do deserve a lot of credit, right? They knew who they wanted. They've been working on it for 5 months. They never dropped the ball. They never lost sight of it. They worked through it. They were willing to do things they've never done before in terms of how they paid a coach, in terms of the power that they gave him, in terms of really giving him control over his staff. Because even over the last few years, the last few hires, they've kind of dictated at least one coordinator to every coach. And it doesn't seem like that's going to happen this time around. So they credit to Dean, first of all, because Dean came out when they fired Staley and Telesco and said, we are reimagining how we do things. We're reimagining how we go about hiring head coaches and GMs. And they absolutely did. And we saw it today. Not just hiring Harbaugh, but they had Harbaugh in the building. And presumably, based on the timing, Harbaugh was involved in the GM interviews, at least one. So that's not something they've done before. So they are clearly aware that they've not been doing things the right way. They've not been getting the job done. They want to be taken seriously. They want to be taken seriously in terms of not being cheap, in terms of being committed to winning. And you saw it in Harbaugh's statement, which I think was pretty telling, talking about the resources they're committing to winning, the facility, the players, the coaching staff. I can only imagine what they're going to wind up paying some of these coordinators when he brings them in to get them to come from wherever they are right now. This is a whole new approach to how they're building the front office, the head coach, the personnel staff, everything. What did they interview? 12 head coaches? Something I don't think I've ever seen before.
Was it like 15? Somewhere between 12 to 15,
something crazy like that. Yeah, I mean, they interviewed literally every candidate you could think of over the last few weeks.
It was 15.
It was 15. And I don't recall of them ever interviewing more than like 5 or 6 head coaches in the initial round. At least not since John Spanos took over. So they are clearly committed to making changes. They're clearly committed to winning. You have to give them all the credit in the world for realizing their shortcomings and taking the steps to fix them and address, not just admit them and address them. So got to give them credit.
2 things, actually. When you're talking about the number of interviews that they actually conducted, I think one of the differences in the team now is that they're, even based off of the season that they're coming off of, very desirable from a top level standpoint where you're talking about roster. Now, everything as far as depth is concerned, different story. But the bones of what it takes to build a contender, they essentially have. Now, of course, there's going to be much tinkering that needs to go on. But, I mean, first things first, you've got an elite ascending, well, potentially quarterback at the helm. And teams go years looking for that. Some never get it right. And then there's the stance that I took quite some time ago about Dean probably feeling like he no longer wanted to be a laughingstock and going out of his way to ensure that wasn't going to happen again. They're playing a different type of ball, not literally, but just talking about being in the second largest media market in the country. You're not going to be able to hide out in LA. So getting your butt kicked on national television on these primetime games is not going to cut it, especially when you're talking about fandom and you want these people to keep supporting you with their money, showing up for these games. And do you want to turn on the TV every day or tune into these podcasts and just listen to people rail you every opportunity that they get? No. So Dean was hearing the noise. He understood that, in the position that they're in now, they can't, go along with what they've been accustomed to doing. That move from San Diego meant a lot. And so you were taking a risk. And you can't do what you've done in the past and expect to have any sustained success. And so he took a hard right turn. And I commend him for that because, it shows that he does care about the status of this football team. And also he has an ego and he fed into it a little bit. And I mean, all the better for it. And so now we're looking at a team that has a strong potential foundation. And we're talking about an opportunity to grow for quite some time and for some years to come. So everything that you've been accustomed to as a Chargers fan, be prepared for it to flip on its head because it is very different now. You don't get a leader like this and expect more of the same.
So let's hit up these stickers we got while we're going through this. First off, Charlie Sinclair, we finally sit at the big kids table. How about that, huh? Who's got it better than us? Nobody. Thanks for all the work you did galvanizing the fan base. Thank you, Charlie. Kim, thanks you all so much for creating and maintaining such an amazing community. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for coming back to the Discord. I know it was rough there for a patch, but thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah. Charlie, thank you all for Garretting. If you're in the Discord, you'll get that inside reference. I don't know why that's sticking, but you don't get to choose what
probably because you don't like it.
Maybe.
That'll work.
Curtis Davis, Garrett, thank you for all the news that gave me hope. Jamie, thank you for the stoic optimism that kept me sane. And Craig, thanks for keeping it straight like the GUR, Bolt Gang, or Don't Bang, BTFU. And this feels like a eulogy almost. But yes, this is a happy time. And thank you, Curtis, for that. We appreciate it. Nick, 1, thank you for putting up with me. 2, for being awesome. 3, if I can donate this for 4 other fans to join the community, I'd love that. And Jamie has to say bolt up.
Jamie, sorry.
Junius.
You put bread on it, man.
For a second, he almost said it. Junius, for those of you who haven't donated yet, this is my $1.99 challenge. I know. You love a good Taco Bell beef burrito, but Harbaugh's our coach. Let's fucking go. Thank you, Junius. Michael says, I got you, Junius. Thank you. And Kim, lastly, thanks for putting up with all the nicks and our anxiety. Now, please bring back Fab. I wish Fab would come back.
We would love to.
Yeah.
We would love to.
We'll see. Maybe with the Harbaugh news, he comes back. But thank you all. This has all been very nice. So let's talk.
Can I just hold on one? I just want to point something out real quick.
Oh, here comes the I told you so.
No.
Oh,
that's
okay.
not it.
Okay.
We'll do that later. I love a good I told you so, but that's not what this is. I just want to point out how amusing it is that we are 10 years in, 11 years in with this podcast, and I finally completed my face turn. Stoic optimism. Did you ever think anybody would talk about me and use the word stoic optimism?
Oh man. No, not me.
I never thought I would hear that. Never thought I would hear that.
Stoic optimism? Oh, yeah. All right. So we kind of talked about what's going on with Harbaugh. He's obviously our first choice. We've talked about it for months and months and months and months. We've been over the top about it. Some would say. I just did
years. We were on him last cycle.
True. Yeah. Okay. All right. You got. We all
too, so
keep the timeline.
I told you so.
The timeline.
There's always receipts, man. Always receipts.
All right. So why I just did a podcast about it. I can talk more about it, but I think, and you guys did top 5. Tell me now that he is head coach, what it is that you're most looking forward to, or what you think Harbaugh is going to bring to this organization. Craig, why don't you kick it off? What is it that you love so much about Harbaugh?
I think I said it on my top 5. He's everything that the Chargers aren't. Tough, resilient, consistent, and a winner. One of the first things that you're going to notice that turns around also is going to be that the team is probably going to be a little bit better structured. And also you won't see very many stupid penalties. I think that was one of the things that served him well in Michigan. Teams did a really good job at playing not just well on the field, but one of the things that helped them overcome maybe, not going to say lack of talent, but when they played more talented teams, is the fact that they didn't make as many mistakes. And sometimes that's your, I'll call it the great equalizer, man. When you're disciplined in that way, it'll help you overcome some of your shortcomings. So you'll see a team that's much more disciplined. The trenches are going to be turned around 100%. It's probably going to be the first thing that gets adjusted, and that's on both sides of the ball, from the inside out. You're going to see a team that's built that way now. For years, you've been looking at a team that's essentially been built outside in. Well, that's going to be 180'd. Jim is going to fix the trenches. The run game is going to be a priority, and he's shown that he can play different styles of offense as well. So Michigan was more methodical in their offense. If you watch them, they weren't, a real tempo team. They wanted to really kind of grind it out. A lot of that kind of had to do with the level of talent on the teams, and also that they had that tough mentality. They were going to beat you until you gave up. And you're going to see some of that with the Chargers, but I think essentially first and foremost is going to be the level of aggression that you see from this team, and toughness, grit, toughness, and discipline. It all comes with Jim Harbaugh. So again, what you've seen from the Chargers in years past, you will not see moving forward under his tutelage.
Yeah, I think Craig made a lot of good points. I think for me, there's a lot of characteristics or concepts that he's going to bring that are going to change. Not concepts. What word am I looking for? I think, first of all, he's going to build a culture. That's the biggest thing. He's going to build a winning culture, which is something the Chargers haven't had here, I don't know, ever, maybe since Marty was here. And that culture is going to demand professionalism and toughness and resilience, and most importantly, accountability from his players. And these are all things, all you have to do is look back to the Raider game at the end of the year. These are all things this team has not had. They haven't had enough leadership. They haven't had enough. First of all, they haven't had enough leadership from the coaching staff in, I don't know, 15 years. Probably longer than that. 11 with the last 3 coaches, plus 6 or 7 with Norv. So almost 20 years, they haven't had any real leadership from the head coach. They haven't had an identity, nothing to fall back on when things got tough. Finger pointing when things got tough. They get punched in the mouth and you could just see the air deflate out of them and the finger pointing start. You're not going to see any of that shit anymore. I mean, these guys are going to fight for each other. They're going to fight for Harbaugh. And if they don't, they're going to be gone. You're not going to have any of these cancers anymore. This is a whole new era of Chargers football. You take what Marty did with them, and I think you multiply it by about 100, and that's what you're getting with Harbaugh, just from a culture building standpoint. He's going to put something in place that's going to breed winners. And if they don't want to win, they're going to be gone. And then you talk about the physical toughness, the mental toughness to be able to fight back through adversity. Teams that are physical in the trenches, that win at the line of scrimmage. When's the last time we could say that about the Chargers? Maybe Bobby Ross to some extent with Marty.
Yeah, I was going to say Marty, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't get a coach like this ever. It comes along once in a generation, once in every 2 or 3 generations. When you get a chance to hire a guy like this, you do whatever you can to get him on board. Mm-hmm. And he is going to be he's going to redefine everything about this team. And that's what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned trenches, culture building. What the big thing I kept coming away from is just what a established winner he is. I don't know that you get there's some of the like retread coaches like Andy Reid, guys who will get a second shot like right after they get fired, but a guy like Harbaugh who does it at every single level and wins, you know, at USD he wins with Josh Johnson. They're 22-2 in his last year. He goes to Stanford. He gets Andrew Luck to be a runner-up for Heisman twice. They're 12-1. They win the Orange Bowl. He goes to the 49ers. They go to the NFC Championship game twice. They go to the Super Bowl once. He's got to drag along Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith, by the way, through that. And then he goes over to Michigan. He wins the Natty. Even before that, he was a quarterbacks coach with the Raiders in 2002. And that's when Rich Gannon took the Raiders to the Super Bowl. And he was NFL MVP. And it was like everywhere he goes, whether it's at QB coach, whatever level, college, NFL, he's been an absolute winner. And what you see with the quarterbacks that are under him are crazy how much talent he gets out of all of them. Josh Johnson, you know, a backup now for the Ravens, but, you know, was a Peyton Award finalist. He was a PFL Offensive Player of the Year. You got Andrew Luck with the Heisman runners-up. You got Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick having career years under them. Then you've got just a slew of no-names that he dragged through Michigan, where he had a winning record every year, but in the COVID year in 2020 when it was a shortened year, it was, and I memorized them too because they were Jake Reddick, JJ McCarthy was most recent, Wilton Spate, Brandon Peters,
Denard Robinson,
John Horn,
Shea
Patterson, Joe Milton, Cade McNamara, like
nothing.
And he got there's nothing there. And by the way, I looked up some of these guys. John O'Corn's a travel agent right now.
Mm-hmm.
He got a little travel agent, a winning record, you know, at quarterback. So to imagine what he could possibly do with a guy with the talents of Justin Herbert, which he hasn't had his whole career, and yet he's made it to NFC Championship games and a Super Bowl with lesser talent than a guy like Justin Herbert. I mean, it really truly is a match made in heaven for me and for the Chargers and for Harbaugh and Herbert. It does not get any better than this. And I know, you know, who's got it better than us, but really there is no better option at any hiring cycle than Jim Harbaugh is at this current one right now. And somehow the Chargers landed in it. It's unbelievable.
I was going to say, think about this, because I believe this happened not that long after we had first gotten the initial news about the conversation that took place after week 2. Mike Greenberg went on television and said that he and Jim Harbaugh were at a funeral together, and Jim Harbaugh just decides to start gushing about Justin Herbert when they were talking about the best quarterbacks in the league at a funeral. And we're talking about this months ago. This is the perfect ideal scenario for Jim Harbaugh with everything that he has had to work through, with the type of quarterbacks that he's had to overcome some of their shortcomings. I mean, even Colin Kaepernick was a great athlete. As far as a thrower of the ball, not top tier, but you think of that probably being the best of the quarterbacks that he's had since he left the 49ers.
He got capped to throw 3,300 yards.
I mean, just think about that. He's waited all this time
for that. Yeah, it's wild.
He's had to maneuver around quarterback play and been successful doing it. This is literally the perfect storm, no pun intended. But of course, now you have this quarterback that can literally do everything that you want. And if you want to mix in some of the athleticism, you have literally the best of everything that can be offered at the position. This lined up perfectly for him. When you look at the fact that you heard that he potentially wanted a chance at this job last year, but the Chargers decided to hold on to Staley then. You knew Sean Payton was in the mix there. He wanted to get in on it as well. This lined up the way that it needed to for him. He goes out on top at Michigan. You know, you can say what you want about what he leaves in his wake, the potential sanctions and everything that follow behind that. But he guided his alma mater to another national championship, and they haven't had one since they were co-champs almost 30 years ago. So literally the timing of this couldn't be any better. And for us as fans, having to endure what we just went through in these last 2 years, now to having it be like a completely clean slate. And now you're looking forward to this next season with great optimism in the future as well. Because think about this. I know we talk about how Jim has a tendency to burn hot. He's not long for very many organizations or programs. Well, he just spent almost 10 years at Michigan, and now he's walking into a Chargers organization where they're building the staff that he wants. So you're not talking about guys that are already in the building being forced onto him. He's going to have to figure out how to build a relationship with. No, he's going to get his people in there. So we're looking at, I mean, Jim's what, 60? I mean, I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but you're looking at probably a potential, maybe decade-long coach. Maybe. Mm-hmm. This could be his last stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you have a chance to build a staff around him that could be here for years to come and take over when he moves on. I mean, guys will move on if they're successful, and they're going to be successful, but you got to figure he's going to have some. I mean, think about the options he has in terms of who he can build a staff with.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
What that could look like. I mean, just look at the offensive side. You know, you talk about maybe bringing in a Greg Roman as a running game coordinator. You talk about bringing in maybe David Shaw as an offensive coordinator or a passing game coordinator. You talk about bringing in Pep, bring him back, somebody who Justin's familiar with, as the quarterback coach. Not only are you building an amazing staff, but there's guys who could move on to bigger roles as coordinators or otherwise, and you could be talking about comp picks in the next couple of years. Yeah. And it doesn't stop there. Jesse, you talk about Minter. There's all kinds of options here where he could build out a staff that could be a feeder system for the rest of the NFL and just pump out comp picks over the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's just what he has the opportunity to do here is nothing short of amazing. And, Garrett, you mentioned it. I talked about culture building. He's also a team builder. I mean, everywhere he goes, he takes a program that is basically at rock bottom and he builds it up, and they're a winner within almost immediately, within at least a year. I mean, he took over. I mean, who wins at USD?
Yeah, I know.
He takes over USD with Josh Johnson, and he left a program behind, and now they've been successful since he's left. He goes to Stanford, which was like bottom of the barrel. They were a mess in the Pac-12 for a long time. Builds them up. They're playing, 2 years, and they're playing in meaningful games almost immediately, developing, like, just churning out NFL offensive linemen. They crank out Andrew Luck. They got Kevin Hogan in the freaking NFL. I mean, they just keep pumping guys out left and right. And they were strong for years after he left. And then he goes to the Niners. And what does he do with the Niners? He takes a team that's 6-11. They're 13-3 his first year in San Francisco.
He wins Coach of the Year.
With Alex Smith at quarterback, who, by the way, was like on his last legs and was pretty much done. I mean, he set Alex Smith up for success. and put him in a position to succeed in Kansas City. And then he inserts Kaepernick. He builds a whole new offense around Kaepernick. Kaepernick is successful. Then he goes to Michigan. And let me tell you, if you guys don't remember, Michigan was an absolute train wreck when he got there. They hire Brady Hoke from USD. They can't get out of their own way. They go out and they get Rich Rod from West Virginia, and they try to go spread offense. Can't get out of their own way. I mean, recruiting is a mess. Quarterbacks are a mess. Everything is a disaster. Jim gets there, and they're winning 9 to 10 games every year almost immediately, with one exception in the COVID year.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that he does from a team building perspective are amazing. You know he's going to build a great staff, and that's maybe one of the most exciting parts about this is you look at the staff that he can build, and you talk about, Staley struggling to build a staff. You talk about Lynn struggling to build a staff, McCoy, because they didn't have the networks. Yeah. Well, Harbaugh's got the network. He can go get whoever he wants. And who the hell is going to say no to coaching with Jim Harbaugh? Because if you go coach for Jim Harbaugh, you're probably going to be a coordinator or a head coach inside of 2 or 3 years.
This is the Shanahan McVay type pipeline now.
Yeah. I mean, this is a legit coaching pipeline, and he is going to elevate whoever coaches for him. And I'm sure he's going to bring in a number of young position coaches to build around. I mean, this could be, if he's here for a decade, and who's to say he won't be based on his tenure at Michigan, if things work out and relationships work out and he's here for 10 years, I mean, sky's the limit, guys.
Yeah.
This could go anywhere.
Dynastic, potentially. I mean, but now for the folks out there that were freaking out about this 48-hour love fest, now you kind of understand why. It takes a while to build all this stuff out. You're talking about 2 days for the potential next decade plus of this team's future. So, I mean, was it that bad now that you know?
Was it worth it? I don't know. I guess so. But yeah, so what I was going to mention is, we're talking about the network. I mean, Staley had worked with Joe Lombardi, and that was the big hire. That was the guy who was coming over that was going to help this offense. And this, I mean, that's like nothing compared to what we're about to get with Harbaugh, because they're basically going to clean house, start over, and you're going to see big names at anything from like run game coordinator to, defensive line coach to DB coach. I mean, it's going to be a stellar cast around him. I also want to say, when the Chargers hired Norv, the big deal was like he was a QB whisperer. And I think it's worth mentioning that Harbaugh, like I mentioned, how good he's been with those. Not only is he getting wins out of literal travel agents, but he's developed systems around Colin Kaepernick, Josh Johnson, Alex Smith, Andrew Luck. I mean, the amount of different skill sets that he can cater an offense around is limitless. There is no guy that he can't have a successful offense around. There's no quarterback. And so when you have a guy who is not just a run first quarterback, but that has legs like Herbert, and a guy that's got a rocket arm like Herbert, I mean, if he can get 3,100 yards and 3,300 yards out of Kaepernick, I mean, passing, I mean, it really is just, it feels limitless. It feels like, even though they signed a 5-year deal, he was with Michigan for a very long time. I could definitely see a 10-year deal as long as the Spanos get out of the way and give him what he wants, like they said he would, and what they've done so far. If they keep on this track, then we're good. But when Balky did in San Francisco and he stepped on Harbaugh's toes, he was out of there. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, they've already shown a willingness to give him what he wants. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here.
Right.
And he was presumably, based on what we know about what happened in the building today, he was interviewing head coaches. General managers.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So he is going to have some say, if not all the say, in who the new general manager is going to be. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with somebody stepping on his toes, because he's going to pick somebody he trusts and gets along with.
Yep.
And they're going to work together. So I'm not worried about a lot of that relationship stuff. I mean, things can change.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
If he's going to have to work with John Spanos. So things can change. But at the end of the day, they've shown a willingness to give him what he wants. They clearly want to win. And I think Craig said they have an ego. I think to a degree they took their ego out of it in hiring Harbaugh. And hopefully they're going to stay out of the way and just let him do his thing.
All right, let's catch up on some of these more stickers. Thank you so much, guys. Blazing Bolts, bolt the F up. I'll be at the home opener. Thanks for what you guys do. Thanks, Blazing Bolts. Appreciate you so much. Ivan Aragon, where's the TLR draft party? Man, I don't know. Matthew Stanley, I don't know, as in, I don't know. Maybe that sounds like a good idea. We've always kind of teased doing something, but we'd have to get Craig over here too. Matthew Stanley, the draft show is going to be bananas this year. Absolutely. And I'm glad we'll all be doing it together. Steve P, a new era. Let's fucking go. Thank you, Steven. LA Chargers fans, Herbert is finally getting the support around him to succeed. The Chargers are going to be a problem. Shout out to Spanos to giving up control. Yes, like we just mentioned. What's up, guys? From Dane Grippo. What's your guys' top 5 GM rankings now? Do you guys have a ranking yet?
I don't have an order per se. I mean, I have the names. They've basically interviewed essentially everyone that I was thinking of, but my number one guy is kind of really right now it's a tie between Joe Ortiz and Ian Cunningham.
Yeah, I was going to say, and they're Ortiz, right? That's how you pronounce it.
I thought it was Horitz. Isn't it Horitz?
I'm sorry. Is it Horitz or Ortiz?
I think it's Horitz.
It's Horitz. Okay. Sorry.
Well, yeah, they're interviewing Horitz tomorrow. I got that.
That's the second interview for Horitz, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that out? Do we know that?
That it's a second interview?
Yeah, that they're interviewing him tomorrow.
Oh, I think Rappaport or somebody tweeted that out this afternoon.
I think that just came down a little while ago. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I am. How do we pronounce it?
I think it's Horitz.
Horitz. Sorry.
Okay. Horitz is my number one right now. Jamie?
If I was gonna do a top 5, I would say Horitz. I'll do a top 4. Horitz, Cunningham, Aponte, and
Brown.
Now, really quickly about Don Aponte. I was thinking about it a little bit. And does it make sense, even if they don't bring her in for a GM role? I think she has a lot of background in the admin and dealing with cap, things of that nature. I mean, potential replacement for Ed McGuire at some point, maybe. Not saying that Ed's going to leave now, but I mean, he's pretty long in the tooth. Been around for a while. Whatever role they could bring her in at, if it isn't GM, she could be being groomed to replace Ed potentially.
Possibility. I mean, Ed is basically family for the Spanos. He's been around forever,
Mm-hmm.
so I doubt he's going anywhere anytime soon. But I mean, her experience is so diverse in terms of accounting and legal experience and being in the NFL front office and all of that. I honestly, I think you could slide her into almost any role.
Mm-hmm.
You could create like a COO type role for her and slide her in there. There's so many options. And how amazing would it be to come out of the GM search with either Horitz or Cunningham and Aponte heading up the front office? I mean, talk about reimagining the process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a game changer.
I don't know. I feel like the fans manifested this into reality. Thank you, Garrett, Jamie, and Big Craig, for all your passion. Love you guys. Thank you for my powder blue heart. Thank you. Holy cow. Sean Dowdy, what a contribution here.
Whoa.
I can't remember seeing this fan base so excited, myself included. Maybe the Marty years. This feels like the new era of the Chargers football. Give us a bolt up, Jamie. You see it. Come on, buddy. Here we go. Brrr.
Bolt up.
Hey!
That's the only one you're ever going to get.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
We got him. Nice. Stanley, I think even more than his coaching is the sign the Spani are finally letting the football people do the football things. This is huge. It is. It is huge.
Huge.
Yes. Thanks, Stanley, for everything.
That's all we've been asking for.
Yep. Robert Straw, thank you for the Discord community. Excited for a new era with Harbaugh. Donating to the kicker punter tape for 20. I can't read that last part. Curtis Davis went out. It was weird. My screen went black for a second. Curtis Davis, Chargers get Harbaugh. Raiders get Telesco. Dolphins could get Staley. I might cry. Now go get Joe Horitz.
Is it Hortiz? I thought it was Horitz.
Horitz. I said Horitz.
Hold on. Let's
get this right. To complete the holy trilogy. Thank you. Bolt the fuck up. Nice. It is wild too that the Raiders saw the Chargers get their ass kicked in person.
They rolled over for him.
And they go, you know who I want as my GM? The guy who made that roster.
What's even better?
Give me that guy.
He is an excellent judge of football character.
All the ridiculous justifications for him on Twitter from Raiders fans. We're talking about whenever we do the next mailbag, we could fill a whole show with just people justifying that hiring.
Oh, the Raiders? Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Trey. Wow, Jamie said it would take a Super Bowl to say bolt up. It just took Harbaugh and that giant donation.
Next best thing, I guess.
To the guy who accidentally like added an extra 9 to his $4.99. Awesome. Man, this is amazing. Oh.
Wow.
So what now what?
I think we should talk a little. I think we should talk a little bit about what we think the coaching staff might look like. We've kind of hinted at a little bit, but
let me share something real quick because we got notes from the Spanoses after the hire. Here's their statement. Jim Harbaugh is football personified. I can think of no one better to lead the Chargers forward, said owner and chairman of the board, Dean Spanos, the son of a coach, brother of a coach, and father of a coach who himself was coached by names like Schlembeckler. Who's that?
You don't know who that is? Come on, Garrett.
I'm not that old.
Famous Michigan coach.
Neither am I. Michigan, man.
You know who that is, Craig?
Yeah, Michigan man.
Okay.
One like there's Jim, there's Bo, and who's the other Michigan?
Garrett getting exposed over here.
That I'm young and you guys are old men. Yeah, I'm so exposed, boomers.
I'm just 40. Okay.
And for the past 2 decades, Jim has led hundreds of men to success everywhere he's been as their coach. And today, Jim Harbaugh returns to the Chargers, this time as our coach. Who has it better than us? You don't build a resume like Jim's by accident, and you don't do it by yourself, said President of Football Operations John Spanos. You need a team, and nobody has built a team more successfully and repeatedly in recent history than Jim Harbaugh. His former players swear by him, and his opponents swear at him. Jim is one of one, and we couldn't be more excited to have him back in the Chargers organization as our head coach. That's actually a pretty good line.
That's the best quote that's the best quote I've ever heard from John Spanos. I'm sure somebody wrote it for him because
it would be in crayon if John...
I was gonna say his was in crayon and somebody had to type it up for him. His had
still a great quote.
His had like Capri Sun stains on it and like Cheeto dust. And somebody had typed it up for him. Oh man. Oh, here we go. For what it's worth, apparently it's Hortiz, rhymes with Ortiz.
Hortiz.
Okay. I stand corrected.
All right. And just know, Jamie, people are looking to clip your bolt up thing. So just know
that's gonna live forever.
You're gonna be gift up. And
that's
you know what?
It's my gift to them.
Yeah. Good.
It's the only time they're ever going to hear it, so they might as well get as much run out of it.
No. You don't get to back out of this now. If we win a Super Bowl, you got to stand by that.
You got to keep going. All right, cool. Staff, give it to me. So, how do you guys feel? I mean, I know Jesse Minter's probably. I don't want to say like written in stone or anything, but it seems likely that Minter will be DC. Correct.
I think
Everybody agree there?
Makes the most sense. Yeah. Based on what it looks like, Jim's probably going to want to do the success he found in Michigan after he tabbed his brother. And I think he had a choice between, was it Minter and McDonald about who was going to come to help him out at Michigan. And John gave him Minter. So you are going to probably see a lot of the same. And oh, by the way, folks, linebacker will be a priority moving forward. I know it's been thrown to the side before, but if you want to see a defense in the Harbaugh image, go look at the Ravens, and you're probably going to see something very similar in the coming years to the Chargers. So I definitely see Minter coming along with them.
Yeah, I think Minter probably comes as a DC. I think you will see his son Jay come in some capacity, hopefully not as special teams coordinator, but he has been an offensive position coach. I think he's coached wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends, so he could coach pretty much anywhere. I think the most interesting part is going to be the offensive staff because there's so many good options, and so many creative ways you can go about building it.
No, I have a question really quickly. I don't think there's a connection, but have Monken and Harbaugh ever worked together in any capacity? I don't think so, right?
Has who? Say that again.
Not Monken. He and Harbaugh, I don't think they've worked together.
I don't think so.
I mean, I know when we're talking about the offensive side, of course, Jamie kind of ran through the names. I think we're pretty much on the same page there. David Shaw coming in as a potential OC, getting Pep back in, I think would be huge for Herbert because, I mean, we've already been down that road before his first year. I would love to have Pep back in the fold. And if Greg Roman does come back in, yes, if he's associated with like the run game coordinator, something like that, just don't let him call plays. I really don't want to see him as an OC, even though he has that history with Jim as well. But those are probably going to be your top names from an offensive standpoint. As far as the other positional coaches, I haven't really run down the list of all the other relationships and other positional coaches that could fill it. But I think those are kind of the main ones.
Yeah, I don't want Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, but with Harbaugh, I'm just whatever on it. I mean, it's not my first choice, but if you get Jim Harbaugh at the cost of having Greg Roman calling plays, it is what it is. I don't want it, but I understand it. He's probably going to be involved. Minter as DC really excites me because it feels like a young mind, because it feels like we're going to get some fresh blood in there, and then we're going to get some like grizzled veterans in there too, and it's just going to be a beautiful mix of a bunch of great football minds. And it just I can't, I mean, I know seeing Minter as DC or even Roman as OC, you've got, an old veteran and then the younger up and coming, but Minter excites me. I feel like he's where the kind of new football is headed. I think he's a good dude, and I think that his defenses have been pretty good, and I'm excited to see what he can do under Harbaugh with the Chargers. I like Minter, so I think that's kind of exciting. Greg Roman does not really excite me so much, but I'm excited just to see the mix of everything. And there's going to be a shakeup from probably strength and conditioning coaches to analytics department. I mean, Harbaugh's not going to take anybody he doesn't want. So it's going to be exciting to see a whole new shed of new faces.
Something else that really excites me, by the way, and I don't know if we've touched on it at any point, but Harbaugh coming in gives us a little bit of an advantage from a roster building standpoint. When you think about the fact that he's coming from the college ranks and he understands like the next few classes that come out, because he may have recruited a bunch of those guys, not just the guys that he coached. So when you're talking about a team that's going to have to turn over multiple positions and have to get cheaper when this Herbert contract starts to kick in and building depth, we are also an additional advantage for the fact that he's going to have intimate understanding of those classes for the next few years.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's a point that I made on my top 5 list too, was, that's the blueprint that the Seahawks followed with Pete Carroll. And it's why they had so much success finding those mid to late round picks early in the draft, because guys slipped through the cracks and Carroll was drafting the guys that he recruited. And I think you'll see something similar with Harbaugh, where those 5 and 4 and probably some 3-star prospects that are coming out into the draft over the next probably 3 to 4 years, Harbaugh's going to have some great intel on those guys, and he's going to know about their character and their work ethic, which is something I think the Chargers have struggled nailing down with some of these guys they've drafted in recent years. And I think you're going to see a spike in the depth, just from a standpoint of he's going to have guys that he knows really well who maybe slip into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Even UDFAs.
Yep, even UDFAs. And it's going to make an immediate impact on the roster. It's going to help kind of restock the cabinet, so to speak. pretty quickly.
Yeah. This is such a good day, and so exciting. Just thinking of the possibilities of how this, not only the roster shakes out, but how the coaching staff shakes out. And man, I can't remember a better time going into a season than since, they were good with Marty, or maybe even Norv, but God, it's been over a decade for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely different feeling. They're going to go in with a plan. They're going to go in with an identity, and they're going to have a chance to do some real damage every year. And they're not going to fold when things get tough.
Let me ask you guys a question. While you were watching Marty and Norv eras, did you like Marty and Norv as coaches, or did you like the teams? Did you like Marty and Norv?
I did not like Marty. I was never a fan. I hated Marty Ball.
Yeah.
I hated it. And that Patriots game, you can point to the Marlon McCree fumble, but Marty completely mismanaged that entire game. And you could see where that game was headed, even though they were winning the majority of the game. You could see where that game was headed at the end of the Chargers' first drive in the first quarter when they're going forward on 4th and 13 from like the 40-yard line, trying to prove they don't need Marty Ball to win. I hated Marley. Norv I understood, because Norv was, like you mentioned, Garrett, he was that quarterback whisperer, and I felt like they brought him in specifically to elevate Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And he did for a little while before Rivers took a beating behind the 7-step drops and no offensive line. But Norv was just a disaster from a game planning, leadership, culture standpoint. He just seemed like a dunce out there. I had no idea what was going on.
I had a love-hate relationship with Marty Ball because me being an old school football guy, loving the idea of just kind of pounding the ball and using that kind of to set up your offense, leaning on it. But again, just kind of like Jamie spoke to, he was really kind of a curmudgeon about it, stuck in his ways, and essentially just kind of, I can understand how he wore on the organization. But overall, just from a game plan standpoint, it just didn't mesh well for where the NFL was going. As far as Norv goes, same thing. You kind of get a bit of the opposite. You get Rivers in there, you start winging the ball around, which is great, until you decide to not invest on what was most important for a guy who, probably runs like at his best of 5'4", 40, something like that. I'm probably giving him too much credit. But it was just nice to see the ball being thrown down the field. That kind of brought on the advent of some of those bigger wide receivers where Phil was just kind of throwing the ball up too. It was fun to watch, but by the same token, as long as Phil's career was, I think he took some unnecessary hits that probably affected him in some really key games and situations, and the Chargers kind of suffered for it. So ultimately, long story less long, I didn't love either coach, but if I had like a preference on the type of ball, I guess I would lean more towards Norv. But I mean, I had the things that I did love about Marty and kind of what he stood for more so than the product that was on the field, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I didn't like Marty Ball, and I didn't love Norv. I loved those teams, but I never really loved the either coaches. And I say that to say, I mean, I liked when they brought Norv in. I did not like Marty Ball, but I liked it when they brought Norv in, but I didn't really love his personality so much. And I liked the Staley hire, but obviously none of which we liked ended up working out, and nor did he stick to the good things that he did as a defensive coordinator. But this is the first time I feel like in my lifetime I love the Chargers head coach. I've never loved a hire. I liked Marty. I guess I liked Norv. I liked Staley. I fucking love this hire. And I don't think ever in my lifetime as a Chargers fan, I've ever loved a Chargers head coach. This franchise has given me such bad names, such bad players, such bad head coaches, everything in between. This is the one thing I fucking love. And I loved this hire. And I just thinking about it, I've never loved a hire the Spanos have ever made. except this one that they made today.
And I think the key thing is, at least for me, and I don't know if you guys agree, with Staley, we fell in love with Staley's backstory. The cancer survivor, everything his family went through, how he worked his way to the head coaching job. He was a very relatable guy who was easy to root for on a personal level. And we liked the personal side of it. And I think there were some people who felt the same way about Lynn, whereas like he's easy to root for. He's worked his way up slowly. You know, he was a special teams coach. He was a running backs coach. He never really got a fair shot. He's a motivational speaker. People are going to love him. He was easy to like on a personal level and easy to root for because of what it took him to get to that point. I don't remember the Chargers hiring a coach in my lifetime that I loved specifically for football reasons, exclusively for football reasons,
right.
Where I look at it and say, I know this guy's going to fucking win. I know he's going to build a team and a culture, and he's going to fucking win games. And we got a shot to win a Super Bowl in the next several years with Herbert at quarterback locked down. And that's the difference for me, is that this is a football hire. They didn't fall in love with a personality or a salesman. They fell in love with a football junkie who's going to win games. And that's the difference for me.
Yeah. They finally pushed their chips in on the phase that matters, a person who can produce a winning product. It's why I don't understand where all the hate from Harbaugh came from initially. Like this groundswell of support for him came recently with Michigan winning a national championship, and maybe just like slightly before that, but a year, 2, 3, 4 years, you would see people saying crazy stuff about not wanting him around. And I don't know what that was based off of. I mean, all he's ever done is win. And if you take into consideration where he went, you know, his alma mater, and the fact that he's playing against these teams that recruit better, they're getting better players, and he's still being very competitive. I don't get where the negativity really came from. If you paid attention to the fact that the guy just goes to different programs and organizations and turns them right around and basically in short order, why would you not want that on your football team? And maybe you don't like his personality. I could care less. If he wins, he can be whoever the hell he wants to be. I mean, this is football. I'm sure that some of the best people that maybe even you consider those that you look up to that are deemed to be successful in whatever field they're in, you may not like everything about them personally, but at the end of the day, what about them really matters in the avenue or the field that they're in? This is football. Attitudes are going to be what they are. People have their different personalities and quirks, whatever you want to call them. But at the end of the day, again, the man wins, and that's all we want here.
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty good place to end here. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I think the only thing that we should talk about is this and how we feel about this and what it might mean.
Oh, okay. Which is, from now is the time. Should we read into the Chargers blocking Kellen Moore from interviewing? Jamie?
So, knowing that they seem to be giving Harbaugh whatever he wants, I would have to assume that Harbaugh at least wanted a chance to interview Kellen Moore before he made a decision on head coach, on offensive coordinator. So my assumption is that they blocked him because Harbaugh asked them to block him. And I think there are things that Kellen Moore does well. I do think he's a good play designer. I think he has flashes of being a good play caller. He does not understand protections. He does not understand offensive line play at all. So for me, I think if there's thought about retaining Kellen Moore, which I would prefer they did not do, but if they were going to do it, you need to make sure you bring in a passing game coordinator and an offensive line coach who knows what the fuck they're doing, because they have not had that in recent years. If I had my way, I would throw a huge bag of money at Mike Munchak as the offensive coordinator. As the offensive line coach, excuse me. And I'd probably hire David Shaw as the offensive coordinator. And I would hire I would at least consider hiring. No, I'm blanking on his name.
Hamilton?
No,
Roman
as the run game coordinator. And I would surround more with people who understand offensive line play so that they can design the protections to make sure they work. Because I think that was the biggest flaw in his offense with the Chargers was he just didn't understand protections. So that's what I would do. My preference would be not to keep him, but if that's what they're going to do, they need to surround him with better coaches in terms of run game coordinator, pass game coordinator, and running and offensive line coach.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to clear up, because I'm not sure about this yet. Timing of it seems interesting. Do we know when that block actually happened? Because if it wasn't something that just recently occurred, let's say it was over the last few weeks, it could very well have been them covering themselves in the event the Harbaugh thing didn't work out. So just curious as to when this actually took place. I'm not sure when it did. I just also, like I said before, it seemed really convenient that this news would come out when it did.
It broke. I mean, we found out about it. I think it was over the weekend because somebody reached out to him about interviewing it was the Bears, I think, wanted to interview him for a head coaching job or for an offensive coordinator job, excuse me. And the Chargers blocked him. I think it was recent.
It was the 21st. So 3 days ago, and it was the Bears.
Okay. So I guess even with knowing that, and it having been a few days ago prior to Harbaugh being around for the last 48 hours, even though you knew the direction you wanted this to go in, you couldn't just say with any certainty that he would sign off, especially kind of knowing his history here and his last stint with, potentially coming into the NFL. So there's still a part of me that feels like maybe, and I mean, if they end up not keeping it around, then that'll, be the telltale. But they may have just been covering themselves in the event that he didn't sign.
It's possible, but I would think it was after the first interview with Harbaugh, after 4 or 5 in-person meetings. I gotta think they had a pretty good idea of where things were headed by then. So I could be wrong, but I don't think they're doing anything right now without, or at least leading up to the second interview, without Jim signing off on it. Just based on the way things have unfolded. That's my feeling, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they end up doing with them. I guess it tells us what direction they really want to go in one way or the other.
Yep. All right. We're going to see very soon. And you'll see us again when they announce the GM. We'll break that down as well. But we had to get on for this emergency podcast because the Jim Harbaugh era begins today. Yeah. Let's go. Thank you. I'm at Garrett. Jamie is at lightning_round. Craig at top_flight, FLYT3. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.